Welcome back to the Soldier's Sacred Rage series. This is really my way of asking you to understand what it is that you are thanking soldiers for when you thank them for their service. So I'm hoping that you'll stick with me for the next 10 minutes as a way of thanking this soldier for her service. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that is a bit heavy, so I'm just going to say that up front. It is about sexual trauma, military sexual trauma, and I know that this can be heavy for some people, but this is unfortunately what a lot of service members face. I remember when I was doing my dissertation for my doctorate in psychology, and I was reviewing military trauma. And one of the things that they talked about was that combat trauma, there was not a direct causation between combat and trauma, meaning that just because you've been in combat doesn't mean it necessarily causes PTSD. But one of the highest correlations was in sexual trauma, and it was more directly related, and there were more incidents percentage-wise of people who had faced military sexual trauma and those who had PTSD. And I can tell you, anyone who's been through this can tell you why. I remember when I was the military police commander, when there are more serious crimes like murder or rape, sexual assault, they get handed over to the Office of Special Investigations, kind of like NCIS, if you guys have seen that. So the military police would generally be the first responders, and then we would hand things over to the Office of Special Investigations. And I remember they had a special position dedicated to sexual assaults. This is the military's way of saying, "Oh, we take this seriously," um, which I laugh, and you'll understand why in just a second. Because I remember talking to this person, this person who was specially dedicated to work with victims to investigate these crimes. And I'm assuming, I mean, I can only assume that the reason she was put there is because she was a female, and they somehow thought that she would be more caring or compassionate or understanding, because the largest percentage of sexual assaults are against female soldiers, although it does happen for the men also, because as we know, sexual assault is generally not about the sex. Um, but I remember her saying, these women come into the military and they think that because these men are in the military that they can trust them. And then they go out drinking with them, and then they're shocked when they get sexually assaulted. It was a classic example of victim blaming. And I remember thinking about that and going, yeah, we should be able to trust these people. You're asking me to go to war with this person. You are asking me to depend on this person for my life. And yet somehow her implication was that I couldn't, have a drink with this person and not trust them to not sexually assault me. And in sexual assault, the reason why there's such a direct correlation with PTSD, is that it is so personal. It's this one-on-one, like now your feeling of safety and security and trust in the people around you, it gets destroyed, because you do kind of go through life, thinking that you can trust people, especially, the soldiers that are meant to have your back. And this is what we preach in the military, is that, you have to have a wingman, a battle buddy, someone who's got your six, who's gonna, help to keep you alive. Um, and when you can no longer trust that, that's a bit devastating. And I remember when I had been sexually assaulted, and the first person I told was another female soldier, which, looking back on it, maybe she lacked the maturity, the skills to hold what I was telling her. But I remember, I was hysterical. I was crying, and I remember her looking at her watch and saying, "Oh, I have a meeting with Colonel so and so. Can we talk about this later?" And of course, we never talked about it. And that's nothing against her because, like I said, I think sometimes we can't hold things. And I've talked about this before, that even professionals, therapists, psychologists, not all of them deal with sexual trauma, not all of them deal with PTSD, because it is a skill set and it is hard to hold sometimes. And we don't know what to say, we don't know what to do. Um, and I remember the second person I told, another female soldier, and she told me, "You should have known better to put yourself in a situation like that because you're military police." As if somehow it was my fault, that I trusted someone that and honestly, the only reason why my sexual assault wasn't a full-blown rape is because I was stronger than he was. And but that's hard. It's hard to hear, people blaming you. And I had already had this conversation with this investigator. I knew the way the system worked when I got sexually assaulted. And based on what I knew of the system, based on the way that I knew that the system treated victims, there was no way I was going to report it because I didn't want to be blamed. I didn't want to be, run through the ringer. I didn't want people to say things like, "You should have known better because you're military police." Um, you know, and uh, and I chose not to report it. What I chose instead was to become a victim advocate, to do training. I was stationed at the Air Force Academy at the time, and so I used to do training for the cadets on sexual assault and prevention. And I remember one of the things I used to talk about, and I'm hoping maybe that people could hear this, is I used to use the example. So let's say that you and your girlfriend, you're hot and heavy, and you're really excited and you're really into each other, and you're in the heat of the moment, and angry dad comes in, threat of death, comes in. What do you do? And of course, people will be like, "Oh, I'd run out naked, I would do this, I would do that." Um, and I used to ask, wait, so no one would say, "Hold on a minute, I am almost finished." And the point I was making is that when you have angry dad, there's a motivation to stop. And a lot of times I hear people say, "Oh, in the heat of the moment, this and that," and I know that we're not always good at using our no, and I know that we're also not very good at talking about sex and about whether or not we're in a place where we should be having sex with each other. But my point was that I want a person's no to be as strong as angry dad. I want it to be just as motivating when a woman says no to go, "Oh, okay, no, this means we stop. This means we don't go any further. This means that I respect you and that, when push comes to shove and things get hard, that you can rely on me to respect you." Um, and I remember calling this investigator's commander, and I was asking him, do these investigators that are specially signed to work with victims of sexual assault, do they get any additional training, any sensitivity training, anything? And after a while of me asking these types of questions, I remember him saying, "Okay, Kim, clearly you're getting at something. Like why are you asking me all of these questions?" And I told him what she had said, you know, um, and it doesn't change anything, but I just hope, that, and I know that sometimes we can be tainted. Sometimes we hear the story where a woman lies because she's not wanting to get in trouble with her husband, and those do exist, but they are the vast minority, a very small percentage. um, and when we treat women who are victims or men who are victims, like the criminal, like it's somehow their fault that maybe they dressed a certain way, or they looked a certain way, or that they maybe egged a person on and somehow changed their mind, which is totally our prerogative. And we just need to talk about when we're having sex, like what it means. Like are we really into this? Um, but really to have this sensitivity, and you don't have to be a special investigator to have this sensitivity, and to hear a person out. And yeah, clearly you can also understand that there are two sides to every story, and that there's probably something in the middle. And there are people who have such anger and such rage and such, they have such hard things in their own lives, or they haven't been taught how to respect other people, and the way that they treat their sexual partners is no different, because they don't know how to handle those things in a mature way. And so I'm just asking that you consider, when a person tells you that they have been sexually assaulted, like how you hold that for them, how you listen, and how suspend judgment, and you're just there for them. And yeah, so this is our topic for this week, is how to to handle sexual assault, how to hold sexual assault, how not to be a perpetrator, how to respect our people that we're potentially in relationship with. And that's something that I'll actually talk about on a different day, is how we can have these conversations. But thanks for listening, and thanks for being here with me. And until next week.